Hello there. Happy Sunday. As I have been doing the last couple of weeks during this Summer of Love, I have been sharing my sermons, my church sermons, with those of you who can't make it to church. I am following this this sermon series. I'm doing the sermon series about the Summer of Love, exploring all the different ways that we know love. And there's been kindness and mercy, there's been justice, and this week is hospitality. So I am happy to share my sermon about hospitality or entertaining angels with you. We usually think of hospitality in terms of the hospitality industry, restaurants and hotels and resorts. And even some areas of the healthcare sector are using the word, thinking in terms of customer service and calling their patients guests. But what does hospitality mean to a church, a building that is supposed to offer sanctuary and welcome and fellowship to all? When we set up a table and chairs and leave the door on the latch, or when we lock the cupboards in our kitchen and put up instructional signs telling people what to do and what not to do, and keep those doors locked, what are we telling the community around us? What kind of welcome can they expect from us? What does Christian hospitality look like? Hospitality is about meeting the stranger and welcoming them into our midst without worrying if they can pay us back or if their boots are dirty. Hospitality doesn't require a belief in God. It's simply the act to welcome whomever comes through the door. No questions asked. There's no application to fill out, so we can determine if they would be a good fit for us. Hospitality is about opening up our space to whoever needs time, rest, nurture, support. And that house can be a church, our home, our heart. Here's a story from a book I'm reading called The Scandalous Gospel of Jesus. It's written by Harvard professor and pastor Peter J. Gomez. And he writes, "Many years ago, I was preparing to preach as a guest minister in a very posh church. And just as the rector and I were about to proceed to our prayers before the service, a wildly disoriented young man burst into the room. He spoke loudly but nonsensically, seemingly either on or off something. Whatever it was, though, his erratic behavior was familiar to the rector, who treated him with enormous but firm courtesy and let the little tantrum run its course. The intruder left as abruptly as he had arrived, and while I was shaken, the rector was not, and was clearly used to such interruptions. As we pulled ourselves together, his thoughtful comment was, 'I keep hoping it isn't Jesus.' I keep hoping it isn't Jesus. Why? Why would we hope it isn't Jesus? Because we don't welcome them just as they are and try to figure out what they need? Because we just put up with someone's presence then encourage them to leave? Because we don't do everything we possibly can to welcome the stranger in whatever state they arrive and give them sanctuary? Because we worry more about carpets and cups and pews and plates getting dirty or broken or stolen than we do about what people really need, which is simply food and shelter. From Leviticus, which is the third book of the Old Testament, we get this statement. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native or fellow citizen among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So, like justice, right from the start, hospitality, treating others the way you want to be treated, or the way you would want to be treated should you find yourself in an unfamiliar place or a bad situation, this is fundamental to our relationship with God and therefore with each other. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." It's a verse from the book of Hebrews. Author Kathleen Norris says, "Hospitality is the center of the Christian faith." Of course, Jesus showed us who we should welcome, and it really isn't the ones who pre-purchase tickets in the box seats with their credit cards, and it really isn't the ones who pull up to the door expecting valet parking. It isn't the ones who sit at the head table and have their glasses refilled without asking. And it really isn't the ones who have the ear of the Minister of Labor or the Minister of the Environment or whatever minister they need. Jesus wants us to show hospitality to those who need it, not to those who expect it, who believe they've earned it. To the poor, the sick, the disabled, the brokenhearted. To the dirty and the weary. To the ones with the erratic behavior. Even to the ones who might pass out as soon as they get to a pew. Maybe they're not drunk. Maybe they just feel safe enough to rest. I say that based on the assumptions that we make about people. Those people who might be Jesus. Remember, don't neglect to open up your homes to guests, because by doing this, some have been hosts to angels without knowing it. According to theologian Henri Nouwen, hospitality is a matter of clearing a space in our hearts for the person who is entering. Whoever is entering, the rich and the poor, the hearty and the heartbroken, the well-coiffed and the messy, the quiet and well-behaved and the noisy and disruptive. Because as Canadian author and journalist Donna Sinclair said, hospitality, the welcoming of others, also welcomes the divine. Here's another story, this one from Jeff Doucette, a United Church minister in Ontario. I was a Catholic priest for 13 years, and I can honestly say I never refused anyone communion, and I certainly never insulted anyone by insisting they ask for a blessing rather than come to God's table. Each Sunday my words were the same. If you need strength for the road of following Jesus, come. The table is ready. Come, eat and drink and be nourished. I never believed the church had the right to say who could and could not sit at God's table. That belonged to God. God makes the guest list and we have no control over it. God sets the table and puts out the name cards and waits with love for us to arrive and feast. God opens the tap to communion, breaks it off so that we can never turn it off again. Because you never know who might be Jesus. Remember, don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it. What really struck me as I began reading and writing about hospitality is how much it sounds like justice. Hospitality is as important and essential as justice. They have much in common, yet I find justice much more difficult to grasp or to write about. I think it's because justice is a whole bunch of ideas that come with a whole bunch of expectations. And there's all the injustices, and you get overwhelmed so quickly by what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed. Whereas hospitality is one idea and one expectation, much like Jesus' command to love one another. Hospitality says, welcome everyone. So in keeping with our theme of the summer, let's recap. Love is justice, is hospitality. These aren't either or concepts. Every single one of these is an and. We are called to love and do justice. We are called to love and show hospitality to others. We are called to love and do justice and welcome strangers, foreigners, every person, no matter who they are and where they come from. Now, knowing that love is an action that we take, what does this mean? It means we go to the airport in Toronto and we look for the asylum seekers coming off the planes. We'll know them from the other refugees because the asylum seekers aren't the ones being streamlined into hotels. That's for the refugees we prefer. Instead, asylum seekers are offloaded to Central Intake, which manages the emergency shelters in Toronto. But those shelters are already filled. There is no room at the inn. So the asylum seekers are forced to sleep on the streets of downtown Toronto because there's no space for them, no welcome for them. Let's hope none of them is Jesus. It means we see what is close to home in our own communities this weekend. Hundreds of people living in tents in Halifax amidst torrential rain and thunderstorms and floodwaters. They have nowhere safe to go. As one of the city shelters tweeted Friday night, tents are not safe shelter, and they are not homes. Housing is a human right. Comfort centers are open for people dealing with flooding and power outages. Will the strangers living in tents be welcomed too? Those with no electricity, no basements to flood, do they count? Do they deserve comfort? That's justice and hospitality right there. First of all, the issue of adequate housing and shelter for everyone, always an issue. That's not going away. Kind of like Jesus saying, the poor will always be with you. Meaning, you need to deal with it. You need to do the right thing, because it's not going away. Secondly, our climate is changing, and our weather is getting more dangerous, more catastrophic. Our response to the least among us is a matter of justice and hospitality. We who have lots are called to help those who have less and need more. In any crisis involving the need for food and shelter, clothing, safe spaces, where are the churches? Where are the communities of faith, the followers of Jesus? One church in Toronto finally stepped up to provide temporary shelter to the asylum seekers. One church. And yet all the churches in Toronto should be familiar with these verses. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Because of Jesus, because of love, because of kindness and mercy, because of justice, because of hospitality, we are called to welcome the strangers, the foreigners, the refugees, the asylum seekers, and say, I have space for you. Come with me. I will take care of you. Don't be afraid. Put down your burdens and rest with me. You are safe. I will give you shelter. Which sounds very Jesus-y, doesn't it? Because those are things Jesus said. And that's what we're supposed to sound like. Those are things we're supposed to say. Because no one should be least among us. Justice means fairness and equity. Everyone has a safe place to live. Everyone can find bed in a shelter. Everyone is welcome in a comfort center. Love is justice. Love is hospitality. Hospitality is justice. So last word to 13th century Christian mystic Mechtild of Magdeburg. How shall we live? Welcoming to all. Hospitality is an essential spiritual practice. Or as Jesus said, go and do likewise. May these words be wisdom for our living. Amen. Thank you.